Josh Allen running for not one but two scores in the first quarter, his MVP campaign. He also threw 2 touchdowns passes in the second half as the Bills put up 48 points. And they win. The final score was 48-42. The game was not that close. And so that snapped the Lions' franchise record 11-game streak of victories. It is all over now. The AFC East champion Bills get to 11-3. They've now won 8 of their last 9. The better story, though, is in the losing locker room. So that is where we go as we discuss. The question, what do you make of Dan Campbell's Lions defensively after giving up 48 points in this game against the Buffalo Bills? So I've got infomercial, Spectrum, and Tire Rack. And we will combine all of these things together, and we are going to make an all-you-can-eat buffet. Because for Josh Allen and the Bills, it was an all-you-can-eat buffet of touchdowns and yards, and just amazing. All right, so number one. I said number one. All right. They have no defense. Now, neither the Bills or the Lions have defense, but we're starting with Detroit. They lost the game at home, so we're going to focus in on the Honolulu Boo-Boo. The Detroit Lions there, turnstiles on defense for the Lions at this point. Detroit's roster has been ripped apart. But I'm not going to sit here behind these microphones and have a pity party. That's why they play the games. That's why they play the game. The war of attrition is real. And if the backups aren't good enough, then coach them up. Okay, figure it out. That is why the NFL is supposed to be difficult and all that. So this comes down to the Campbell and also the defensive coordinator, Aaron Glenn. They're playing a lot of backups. They're playing some third-string guys, the Lions, at this point. And the guys that are the backups, the junior varsity, they don't know how to tackle. They're in the wrong position. At least, I was at the Charger-Bucks game, but I had this game on my laptop. I was watching it, and I was like, whoa, what is going on? Did they not know how to tackle? So Aaron Glenn, now, if he can't figure it out the old-fashioned way, may I recommend an infomercial, late-night infomercial, but wait, there's more. The Lions ought to get some Flex Seal, and because there's leaks. They're taking on water here, right? They're taking on water, and they've got this patchwork roster of players right now. They got to figure out a way. The Lions do not have to be great on defense, right? We say this with all teams that are like the Lions, and usually every couple of years there's a team like Detroit that has a good offense and their defense falls apart. They don't have to be amazing. They just have to provide some resistance to the opposition. And how bad was it in this game? The Bills scored touchdowns on their first 3 possessions. Touchdown, touchdown, touchdown. So 21 points right away. They missed the field goal on their 4th possession. And other than end-of-half drives, Buffalo only punted once. Obviously didn't punt at the end of the first half or the end of the game, but they punted once. Buffalo had 559 yards of offense and 48 points against the top dog, or in this case, the top lion in the NFC. That is a humiliation situation for the Detroit football team. Now, page 2. The controversial moment in this game, you say, well, not controversial. Buffalo dominated the game, but there was one moment that stood out head and shoulders above the rest here. The moment everyone talking about, there was about 11 minutes or so to go in the game. Detroit had scored a touchdown, and so they were in position in the fourth quarter. The Lions were trailing by 10. So they're still down by 2 scores. 38-28 was the score at the time. And Dan Campbell did the thing you can't do at the time you can't do it. Dan Campbell called an onside kick. He called an onside kick, and it was returned by Mac Hollins, the guy that doesn't like wearing shoes. Mac Hollins returned it all the way down to the 5-yard line, and one play later, Josh Allen extended the lead. He had a touchdown pass to Ray Davis, whoever that is, and that was the big play. So here's Dan Campbell talking to reporters and explaining why he went for. Now, keep in mind, the onside kick, you have to announce you're calling the onside kick. There's no element of surprise. Why did you do that, Dan Campbell?
I thought we'd get the possession. I thought we were going to get that ball. It's one of Bates' best kicks that I've seen him have. That was a big kicker at the end. That thing took a good jump on us, and Hollis made a heck of a play on it. And, obviously now sitting here hindsight after them taking it down to the 3-yard line, I wish I wouldn't have done that, but it is what it is.
Okay, so wish I hadn't done that. In hindsight, that's like a half an apology. Half an apology is what that is. All right, so what is the word? What is the word for Dan Campbell's Lions going for an onside kick, having to announce with about 11 minutes or so to go in the game, announce they're going for an onside kick in the early part of the fourth quarter? What is the word for that? So I've got on the spectrum, cray. Dan Campbell. Listen, we talked about this after the game with the Green Bay Packers when they were in field goal range and they didn't want to give the ball back to the Packers, and so they went for it on 4th down and 1, and Jared Goff tripped and they converted it anyway. Dan Campbell is going to end up losing a big game. Now, this was a big game, but it's not the same scenario. The scenario for Campbell where he does not come back from that is a playoff game with the lead, and you could kick a field goal, and you don't do it, and you go for it based on the analytics. And I say on the spectrum, it's the nerd spectrum. When I say on the spectrum, I mean the nerd spectrum. And you're tiptoeing around landmines as coach of the Detroit Lions, Dan Campbell, and he's been doing this for several years. And the Lions did not dodge the landmine. They didn't tiptoe around it. They hit it in this particular game. And it's another, I admit my defense stinks moment by Dan Campbell. His actions speak louder than his words. Dan Campbell knows the defense for Detroit is not a championship-level defense. They're not. All right? Aiden Hutchinson, maybe he'll come back at some point. Would the Lions still have any games left by the time that he comes back? But Dan Campbell coaches like a 13-year-old would play Madden football. Like when I was a kid, Madden, the early days of Madden, you just go for it. Onside kick all the time, go for it on 4th down. It's all that. And the nerds are. I don't think the nerds want you to go for the onside kick because it's such a low percentage play. It really blew up for Dan Campbell. Now, moving on from that, the final point on the Buffalo side of things here. Here we go, Buffalo. Back in the win column. However, it is not all sunshine, rainbows, and lollipops. Is there cause for concern yet again for Josh Allen over the Buffalo Bills defense? And I am nodding my head yes. I am nodding my head yes. It is nut-cutting time. Down the stretch we come in the NFL, and Buffalo's defense right now, they need to contact TireRack.com. Now, the reason the Bills need to contact TireRack is because they have a small hole in one of their front tires, and it's leaking air, and they're not going to be able to patch it. They're going to have to get a new tire. All right, there's air leaking. The tire pressure, the PSI is not particularly good. The Bills' defense has now allowed 12 touchdowns the last 2 weeks to the Rams and Lions. That's 12 touchdowns the last 2 weeks. Jared Goff, now a lot of this was desperately trying to come back, but he still had almost 500 yards passing, 4 yards away from that. 496, the yardage total, 5 touchdowns for Jared Goff. So the fun fact that many have pointed out here is that the Lions lost a game where Jared Goff had 5 touchdowns on Sunday. Earlier, they won a game where Jared Goff had 5 interceptions. Remember that game against the Texans? That game. But Detroit put up 521 yards of offense against the Buffalo defense, and the Rams had 457 yards. So my computer-like brain tells me that is 978 yards of offense the last 2 weeks by the Buffalo defense. Now, they're 1-1. They lost to the Rams. They beat the Lions. But very similar position. A very similar position when you look at Buffalo and you look at Detroit. They're carbon copies. It's like a laser printer. You've got a really good offense, and you've got a defense where you're like, whoop. They suck. They're not good. And you don't have to be Tony Romo to do the calculus on this. Buffalo, they do play some lightweights to close out the year, which is good for them. They have the Patriots at home and on the road. In between those games, they have a play date with the Jets in Jersey. So that's what's left. So that should be 3 wins. Now, you can play your backups against the Patriots. They're so bad with Gerard Mayo that you could beat them. So you play your backups, you beat those guys, and then you've got the Jets. And by that point, Jets will likely just give up. That's what the Jets do, usually by that point in the season. So that's where we are. So Buffalo and Detroit, they are a spitting image of each other. And Dan Campbell with quite the decision to go for the onside kick. We'll take your calls. If you would like to be part, you can join us right now at 877-99 on Fox. That's 877-996-6369. Also on X, at Ben Maller. That is at Ben Maller. You can be part of the live radio show. You have an advantage when you listen live. Those daytime people, they can only consume the content, but they can't participate in the content because they're not awake when we're awake. Yeah. All right, straight ahead, a sideline rumble. A little sideline rumble. We'll get to that. And I know it's football and it's taboo to bring up other sports, but there is some interesting baseball news developing overnight. One of the top remaining free agents is this close to a deal. We'll give you the inside skinny on that as we work our way through the overnight. We'll get to all of it, and we will do it next. However, it is the A block. I know it's not hour number 1. Let's see what.
Number 2.
Oh, that sounded like a leprechaun who does bad dad jokes, and calls in the last hour of the show sometimes to do bad dad jokes. He actually has his kids write the jokes. Can I hear that again? What hour is it? Let's see here.
Number 2.
Well, this is the part of the show on the hour, every hour. I tell you, I'm not a weatherman. Thank you. But I will give you my forecast. Let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. Baby, it's cold outside, right? Isn't that what we say? Anyway, and ice and all that stuff. It'll make driving a challenge. Now, thankfully, the experts at Tire Rack know a thing or two about conquering winter's worst. Rain, sleet, slush, whatever winter means to you, Tire Rack has tires that will elevate